Well, I have with me Chandrasekhar from NASSCOM. He has just come back from his US visit yesterday and he met us early today morning. Thank you so much, Chandra, for speaking to us and taking out the time this morning. I'm going to begin by asking you, you've just returned. Take us through the, if there were salient features of the conversations you've had. You have already met officials from the Trump administration. I believe that you've met legal officials as well. So give us a sense of the conversation that you've had so far.
Well, I think basically our effort was in the discussions with, representatives from the Congress, representatives from the administration, interactions with the governors, and various other officials in different wings or arms of the government. So our effort was to actually make them more aware of the benefits that the visa program brings, the kind of work that is done by Indian companies in the US, why it matters to them as much as to us, and in the light of a number of restrictive measures that are on the anvil, what are the issues that need to be kept in mind while moving forward with any proposals.
So for instance, what were the issues that you brought to light with us?
I think that the main issue is that as far as any measures with regard to the visas are concerned, while we respect the views of the government and the administration and the need to protect American workers, I think the question is that any measures that are brought in need to be applicable across all companies, so that number one, the protection offered to workers is real, and the second is that
not just Indian IT companies but also the US IT.
Exactly, it should be applicable to all. So that on the one hand, the protection offered to the American job seekers is real, and on the other hand, there's a level playing field, which is important for the ease of doing business in a country. The other thing is that, the popular misperception in the US that this industry takes away jobs from the US is very far from the truth. And the reality is that this industry has been and is and will be creating jobs in the US, many, many more jobs, and in fact the rate of growth is far higher than the rate of growth of jobs in the rest of the US economy. More than 150,000 jobs already created, a growth of 10% and so on. And besides, the industry provides skills, which is a gap area in the US, which is a big gap area even as per the US government.
So I agree that this is still at a legislative stage, but what was the response that you got in terms of, was there any assurance given with respect to protecting Indian IT companies?
I don't think we were seeking protection for Indian IT companies as such. As I said, I think the primary objective was to ensure that any measures are uniformly applicable, that the measures are, worked out, taking into consideration the fact that the industry is a huge job seeker by itself as well as indirectly, and most importantly that it contributes to the ability of corporate America to create jobs.
Correct.
So I think that is what we had been emphasizing. It's not at a stage where obviously the legislative proposals, while there are a few of them floating around, it's a long way. There are many more steps in the legislative process. But then there are also possible administrative actions.
So for instance, what was the sense that you got from the Trump administration? What are the administrative actions that could have an impact?
I think that there are some genuine concerns that the government has with regard to immigration in general, not with regard to the H-1B. And those broader issues are not only of importance but of some urgency given the context of various discussions and debates that took place in the run-up to the election. But against that broader backdrop, there is also a move to review what are the arrangements with regard to the H-1B visas and what changes need to be brought about.
So is there a possibility that, there have been various executive orders that have come out. So over and above the visa concern, the concern is there could be an executive order on H-1B visa program as a whole. Is that the sense that you got?
Well, you know, I think we have to understand how the American system works. And most of the substantive issues relating to H-1B visas fall within the legislative jurisdiction and not within the administrative jurisdiction. What we are hearing and what in fact the leaked executive order which was available on the net indicates is that on the executive side what is being contemplated is also a greater oversight and review of the implementation to avoid any alleged abuses. And I think we have absolutely no difficulty with that, because the Indian companies have been completely compliant with US law. All previous inspections and investigations have in fact only confirmed that. And many people confuse the difficulties which they have with the visa regime and the objectives of the visa regime and the law as it stands with so-called abuses. So anything which they find as a shortcoming is interpreted as an abuse by the company, which in fact is not at all the case. And as the changes, if any, which are contemplated are brought about, I think it is our effort to ensure that these two aspects are kept distinct, separate, and that when issues are addressed, these broader contribution is kept in mind.
Was the US administration, the Trump administration, open to the issues that you put forth, the suggestions that you put forth? Because that seems to be the concern, that there hasn't been as much of an open dialogue so far.
No, I think that on our part, certainly we were, I think, quite, I would say, had a favorable impression of their willingness to listen and of their willingness to engage in a conversation and understand the issues. And I think it is clear from our conversations that there is a need, in fact a major need for us to continue to engage and make the decision makers, both on the legislative and on the administrative side, aware of all the ramifications of this issue. And many of them are not aware, or at least as aware as we would like them to be. So clearly we have our work cut out for us also to make them aware.
So there will be more meetings that will be required in terms of meeting legislative leaders?
Yes, obviously, as I said, legislation is a long process in the US. There are a number of different dimensions to the H-1B visa program itself. But as I said, there are other issues regarding immigration which don't concern the industry, which are also on the table. And
which
whether
can have an indirect impact on.
Which could have an indirect impact, which could, we've seen, for example, some of the...
Is it slowing the process? Will it slow the process of getting visas, for instance?
The recent administrative instructions which were issued a couple of days ago, dispensing with or rather suspending the priority processing of H-1B visas, certainly would impact the speed of processing of visas and some implications for business as well. But then this is something which is not entirely unusual in the beginning of the year in order to create capacity to handle the rush of applications which come in April. But what is new is that this time the period is 6 months, and it's also applicable to extensions and transfers and so on. So I think we will on our part continue to engage with not only the US government but the US Embassy in India to ensure that there is no hindrance or difficulty for the industry to get the processes.
So you did get the sense that the executive orders, tighter executive orders as far as immigration norms are concerned, are also likely. Further such orders are likely in the next few months.
Well, to the extent that it falls within the administrative purview, and as I said.
So, for instance, would you get a sense of what are the orders that are likely that could have their impact?
I think it's too early to say. But as I said, clearly, one of the things that is being looked at is a greater oversight, which, as I said, that is something that we have no problem with, because the industry is fully compliant with US law. And I think the other aspect is a deeper consideration of all the issues, and that's what also the leaked executive order indicated. But all of these would also provide substantive inputs into the legislative process. Because there are issues, as you may be aware, of whether the minimum exempt wage needs to be raised, if so to what level, whether the lottery system needs to be continued, etc. So as the both the legislature and the executive start addressing these issues, I think the need is for them to be aware of the implications fully, both to the US economy, to US companies, to US employment seekers, and to the Indian companies as well. And this totality needs to be considered.